What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. And as you can see, it's the weekly NASCAR series, and you probably know that at this point that it's coming out every Friday. So let's get to it. Storylines going into Michigan, which is already week 16, almost to the halfway point of the season. Biggest storyline: Blaney finally gets his win. Ryan Blaney, uh, poor guy. It's felt like he's had a lot of bad luck. It certainly has felt like he's been one of consistently the fastest cars, and maybe would be top five in points if it weren't for some of the bad luck and mistakes him and his team made, or the blown engines, or the wrecks. But Blaney finally, after running a great race, especially in the second half at Nashville, finds victory lane, locks himself into the playoffs. No more talking about can Blaney get a win this season. And with Blaney's wins, Team Penske became the first race team to get all of their drivers in victory lane this season. Obviously, Team Penske is one of the top three teams, and usually it's one of those three teams are the only ones that can do it. The other ones being Hendrick and Gibbs. But both of those race teams have two drivers that have not won yet and two drivers that have, which also means Penske is the first race team to not only get all of their drivers to victory lane, but the first team to get to three drivers on your team to get a win. All of them have won. So good job, Penske, becoming the first team to do that this year. Moving on to somebody who had a pretty darn good run last Sunday, Carson Hocevar. Is he a problem? Back in the headlines after dumping Ricky Stenhouse pretty early in the race. And this is the way I'll put it. And I don't think I'm going to say that Carson Hocevar is an endemic and he needs to get wrecked every week and find out. I think that if there's somebody you don't want to piss off, it's Ricky Stenhouse, because he will be somebody that wrecks you. Maybe there's a similar learning bump as there was for Ross Chastain. But there's a NASCAR with the rule changes and the different eras. Right now, I think you're seeing a lot of people, getting wrecked when racing hard, getting wrecked when racing for the lead, but this wasn't for the lead. It wasn't even near the front of the pack. I would not be shocked if Hocevar has some payback coming, and maybe he deserves it. And here's what I'll say to Carson Hocevar. In a lot of ways, you have to respect the fact that he's like, I might not have the best car of a week, but I'm going to do everything I can to make it to the front. I'm not going to cut anybody a break. I'm going to race everybody as hard as I can for every spot. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that mentality, but that's how other people are going to race you. So if you're Carson Hocevar, you better get ready, because I think the more you do this and the more this becomes your reputation, that kind of thing, the more it will be given back to you, and the more drivers will want to teach you a lesson. So I'll have to say, Carson, be careful. You probably will see some payback eventually. But yeah, I don't know if you're a huge problem yet, because it does seem to me that you race pretty clean most of the time, especially when you're up front with the big shots. So maybe that means something else when you race the big dogs fair, but you maybe don't race the middle and back of the pack as clean as you're racing the front. Anyway, is Chase Elliott having a bad season? I've been seeing this all over Twitter, talking about, Chase Elliott can't get in the victory lane. It's been forever. Chase Elliott struggling. Chase Elliott, yada, yada, yada. Here's what I'll say. Most races, it does not seem as if Chase Elliott has race-winning speed. Which is weird because he's on Hendrick, and he has two teammates that have won a race. He has one teammate that's had race-winning speed but can't convert, and now is struggling in points. But Chase Elliott is still top 5 in points. He's still getting stage points. He's still having great finishes. He's being uber consistent. He has one of the best average finishes in the sport. So he may not be winning races, but points-wise, he's good, and it's been proven time and time again. It's not about starting the season hot it's about getting hot at the right time if you want to win a championship. And I don't think it's fair to say Chase Elliott is having a bad season at all, because how many NASCAR drivers under this format or previous formats or in the old school days won championships or got pretty darn close by just having solid days? One of the most famous NASCAR drivers of the 21st century, who only won one championship, you can argue he could have won more under different formats, Kevin Harvick, was known he's gonna, even if he's having a bad day, he's gonna find a way to get points, have good finishes. You always randomly found him at the front, even when you thought it was over. And Chase Elliott's kind of having a similar season where even if he's not in victory lane, which it feels like eventually he has to get a win, but he's finding ways to solid finishes and being kind of quiet about it. And he's top 5 in points. If you're top 5 in points, you can't be having too bad of a season. I know that all the Chase Elliott fans are the largest fan base in the sport, and they want to see wins. But there's things to be happy about. And to be quite honest, here's what I'll say about Chase Elliott winning races. He has won on a variety of tracks. But in my opinion, the two tracks that Chase Elliott is the best at are short tracks and road courses. Now, short tracks, there's always been a plethora of NASCAR drivers that can challenge you for the lead. And that number's only going to continue to get bigger and continue to have stiffer competition. But then you go to road courses. With the amount of road courses, Chase Elliott dominated road courses for so long and dominated them early in his career. But now there's more road course ringers. There's somebody from another series that almost exclusively featured road courses. So now in his career, some of the tracks he's been the best at, there's more competition, meaning harder for him to win. And I personally think that is part of the reason why you're not seeing him in victory lane as much. Still wouldn't shock me to see him find victory lane at somewhere like Watkins Glen. Two other storylines I have for you this week. Is Dodge coming back to NASCAR? It seems like Dodge is making an announcement this weekend and has been hinting at things. And there's even belief that there has been some Dodge Ram trucks spotted doing some testing at Michigan this week, which always led to the question, is Dodge announcing a return to the sport? Which is only being fueled by the fact, if you guys remember, before Stewart-Haas announced it was shutting down, there was a lot of rumors that Stewart-Haas might be moving over to Dodge. And my answer is maybe. I don't know for sure. But right now, NASCAR is going through some expansion. They're doing some things differently where maybe Dodge is like, okay, maybe this is something we want to entertain now. Secondly, there's only 3 manufacturers. Having a 4th one can help. And let's not forget, guys, it would be a risk to go to Dodge, especially because they haven't been in the sport for a long time. But how many tier 1 partner positions are out there? Not a lot. And if you're new to the sport, it's going to be hard to get there. Chevy, you already know who you're competing with for research and information and data. And the same thing with Toyota and Ford. But in theory, if Dodge is coming back, think about all the teams that would now have an opportunity to be a tier 1 partner. And in 2 or 3 years down the road, as information gets out, as Dodge as a manufacturer figures it out, imagine how much good that can do from being a forgotten race team to a top tier race team. And that is what's interesting to me, because that could lead to another team being a consistent front runner. It may not happen right away, but it could happen eventually. And my last point, the in-season tournament, we know who the 32 cars will be, and the next couple weeks will be seeding whoever earns the most points. And I have to say, I don't hate the idea of an in-season tournament. I think it's going to draw interest in the middle of the NASCAR season, where maybe some of it is waning. It'll probably be interesting for betting, and it'll give, I think, some very fun battles on the racetrack. But much like the drivers, I have an issue with how they're doing this. Why does it make sense to have a 32 car qualifying based off of points at Nashville and then do 3 races where you're going to determine seeds 1 through 32 based off of points in 3 races? There's already a point system that takes the entire year into account that can help weed out hot and cold streaks called the regular season points. Would it not make more sense to use the regular season points? I think this in-season tournament could be such a fun idea, and it adds some money for the drivers and whatever you want to say. But it makes 0 sense. I mean, what's going to happen when... I think there's a road course in these seeding races. There is a road course in the seeding races. What's going to happen when somebody, like... I'm not trying to wish bad luck on anybody's driver, but what's going to happen when somebody like Tyler Reddick maybe has a blown engine one week, gets a wreck and gets taken out one week, and then has an okay week, and now Tyler Reddick is 25th in points, and then you have somebody that, sneaks into, or somebody that's slow but has a good 2 or 3 weeks, and they end up being the 8 to 10 seed, And now your seating looks stupid because you have Ricky Stenhouse as an 8 seed and you have Tyler Reddick as, I don't know what that first round matchup would be, but like just a 24. How dumb is that? Would that hypothetical scenario be that is assuredly happened? Now you have something that looks like a massive upset because the way you did the seating, but in reality, it's not. And what's going to happen to things like betting, which whether you like it or not, is a very big part of sports viewership across all leagues. What's it going to look like to sports bettors and people following that might be new to the sport when you look and there's a 28 seed that's favored over a 6 seed because of the stupid format, or 4 seed because of the stupid format? I think that could be a problem. I like the idea for the in-season tournament. I think the way they went about it was horrible. But this is the first race of 3 that seeds all the teams before the tournament. Let's get into history. Winners, Kevin Harvick. One of his last 2 wins where he went back-to-back at Michigan and Richmond. Won in the first next-gen race here. Chris Buescher, when he went back-to-back, maybe even 3 races in a row, when he went on that super hot streak in 23. And then Tyler Reddick in 24. This has been Ford's playground a lot. It was a big thing when Tyler Reddick won last year. It broke up a long streak of Ford winners. I think Fords are still going to be the favorite. Let's look at best average finish. I'm talking about Fords. There is a Toyota. And remember, my average, all of these stats, obviously not the winners. You can't change the winners. But the rest of the stats are active drivers, which is why I have an asterisk, and we'll get into that in a minute. But best average finish of active drivers, Denny Hamlin with 5th. He's averaging a top 5. Denny Hamlin's been fast. He's on a hot streak. Probably the favorite this week. Chris Buescher, look at that, a Ford. Average finishing position, 7.7. Brad Keselowski, a Ford, 8. Ty Gibbs, another Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota, 8. Maybe Ty Gibbs can turn around what has been an awful season for him so far. And then, look, another Ford, Ryan Blaney, 10.7. Now you see here at the bottom, I have my asterisk, and I have 4 guys that would be in the top 5 of average finishing position, but they either have only run one Michigan race or they are retired, and I don't think it's fair to give somebody one race and put them at the top average finish. Harvick has, in his 2 next-gen races, had an average finish of 4.5. Zane Smith and Hocevar in their 1 race have 7th and 10th place finishes, and then Martin Truex, a guy with 3 next-gen races, with a 10.7 average finish. So you can see there's 3 Joe Gibbs cars in the top 5 in terms of best average finish. Maybe Joe Gibbs is the front runner to win this week, and then you can also see RFK easily at the top as well. Most top 5s, 2 drivers are tied at 2. Denny Hamlin and Brad Keselowski, which makes sense when you look at their best average finish. And then 9 drivers have 1 top 5 here in the next gen era. Chris Buescher, Ty Gibbs, Ryan Blaney, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick, and Kyle Busch. So a lot of the usual names with big teams that are used to bringing fast cars. Most top 10s, Denny Hamlin with 3, the only driver who has finished top 10 every trip to Michigan in next gen. 7 drivers tied at 2. Chris Buescher, Ty Gibbs, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Eric Jones, and Daniel Suarez. Those last 2 probably weren't expecting, but have run well here in the next gen. Favorites to win at Michigan. Team rankings for the first time in a long time. Hendrick Motorsports has not won, and I took a risk, and I'm not even putting them at 2. I have Joe Gibbs Racing at 1 and RFK Racing at 2 because I think in the next gen they have been the most consistent and the fastest teams. It seems like Chevy is still trying to figure out Michigan at the next gen, and I have Hendrick at 3, which means Hendrick Motorsports will probably have a 1-2-3 finish this week just because I'm doubting them, and that seems to be what Hendrick does. People are doubting Chevy in general at this track because, like I said, in next gen and really even towards the end of the old gen car, they were kind of not nearly as consistent as the other manufacturers. Team Penske, another Ford, which is weird. I've been talking about Ford, how good they've been. Hasn't necessarily been Team Penske. They've had some wins and some good finishes, but I feel like RFK and Stuart Haas Racing were carrying it most of this decade, and Team Penske was just there. And then 23XI, who won here last year. I think Trackhouse will be fast. Suarez and Chastain both have good races here. They both have led laps. I wouldn't be shocked to see Trackhouse have a good day either. Driver rankings, as of previously mentioned, Denny Hamlin has to be the favorite this week. Out of everybody in the next gen, he's the most consistent at Michigan and is most consistently out front. And then I have Chris Buescher because, he's been really fast here in the next gen, and Fords are really good here. Ryan Blaney, super hot. Fords have been good here. He's been the fastest Ford on a race-to-race basis, and because of that, I like Ryan Blaney to keep staying hot and figure out some speed. Tyler Reddick won the most recent race here, broke up that Ford domination. He desperately needs to win. 23XI needs a good run. They're starting to get a little bit better. Look out for Tyler Reddick. It doesn't feel right not having Kyle Larson in the top 5 at really any racetrack, so I have to put Kyle Larson at 5. If anybody can win for Hendrick, it's Kyle Larson. Christopher Bell, he's led some laps here. He's been up front, but I believe he has 2 DNFs, which crashes his average finish. I think he's a little bit better here than the stats show. I think Christopher Bell has a decent chance to win. Joey Logano, starting to stat together some better finishes here at the beginning of June, end of May. Maybe Joey Logano and 4, will be the standard bearer for Ford this weekend. Like I said, Ross Chastain hasn't been awful at Michigan. He just hasn't been great either. Maybe Ross Chastain gets back into the top 10 and has a chance to win. Ty Gibbs, if there's ever really Ty Gibbs and Brad Keselowski, both 2 guys that should be in fast cars, should be in contention in points, are outside of the top 20 in points. Both guys that I think they expect to be winning races. Maybe Brad more than Ty. But 2 guys that have been really, really good in the next gen here. And also 2 guys that desperately need a good race to get moving towards the playoffs. They just need a good race in general because it's been rough this year for both of those teams. I'll go ahead and put them at 9 and 10. A lot of mix. I think Michigan outside of these top 5 or 6 drivers is really, really a big question mark. You can even see the hometown boy, Eric Jones. It was hard to leave him off. He ran really well last week. He's run really good at Michigan in his career. I feel like Eric Jones might be the dark horse contender to steal a race this weekend. And here we go with the power rankings. Not going to go line by line. I'm going to put you into, tiers here, and we will look at those tiers. William Byron, Kyle Larson, they're still 1, 2. Denny Hamlin's still 3. I think these top 4, maybe even top 5, have kind of separated as your championship favorites, your most consistent guys, your guys who are bringing speed every week. Those top 4, and maybe even Ryan Blaney, if he continues to get hot and continues to start finishing better, I think he's in that group, are probably your championship favorites. They're good on a wide variety of tracks. The top 4 in the power rankings, Byron, Larson, Hamlin, and Bell. All 4 of those guys are top 4 in points, and they're there for a reason. Blaney I have at 5 because he just won a race. He's supernova. He's only top 8. Chase Elliott, I think, is in the next tier. This Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, Joey Logano. That's 6, 7, 8, and 9 on my power rankings. I think that's your second group. Potential championship. I think at least 1, maybe 2 crash the championship party from those first 5. But I don't think they're as good and haven't been as consistently up front this year. So I kind of have them in that 1B tier and that first group, the 1B, or the first group, the 1A. But Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick have not won a race this season. They've been up front a good bit. They have some good finishes. They're good on points, being in the top 8. But both of them are drivers that think they should be winning 1, if not multiple races every year. Maybe one of them finds victory lane this weekend. Ross Chastain and Joey Logano both have recently won and have stacked a couple good performances since then, helping to potentially finish higher in the regular season points. And remember, the better you finish in the regular season points means the more bonus points you get at the regular season for your finish. And then my second tier drivers, it should be, I don't want to say playoff hopefuls. They should be like confirmed playoff drivers. One of them actually is confirmed because he's won a race, but guys that should have enough speed to be like absolutely sure they're in the playoffs. Number 10 in the power rankings, Bubba Wallace. Number 11, Chase Briscoe. Number 12, Alex Bowman. Number 13, Austin Cindric. And number 14, Chris Buescher. Bubba has desperately needed a rebound last week. He rebounded. He has a 2-point lead over Briscoe in the points for the top 10 right now, and really not that big over a lead over number 12, Alex Bowman. I think Bubba, Briscoe, and Bowman all believe they should have won a race by now, or at least should before the end of the season, and they're in a tight points battle for the last spot in the top 10 in points. And I personally am excited to see who comes out. Briscoe has 3 poles, but he hasn't been able to parlay any of that into a race win, and he's really struggling to get stage points, or he would be in the top 10. Alex Bowman, great start, has slowed down, and even though Cindric has a win, I put him with this group because I don't think he's at the level of the other guys that I have in tier 1A and 1B. I think that Cindric is more in this group of drivers, and he happens to be really, really good at certain tracks, and that's why he is where he is. And Chris Buescher, like, he belongs in this too. I actually believe this group I'm talking about, that's 10 through 14, is where they currently sit in the regular season point standings as well. So all of them are in the playoffs. I think all of them should be making the playoffs, and most of them should be getting at least 1 win a year or getting close. So that like at second time I'll say, here's a reminder, that's second tier of drivers that I have in tier 2. Number 10 in the power rankings, Bubba. Number 11, Chase Briscoe. Number 12, Alex Bowman. Number 13, Austin Cindric. And number 14, Chris Buescher, who had a good week getting points and getting a point penalty reduction. And then 15 through 20 is maybe a wild card to get a race win slash playoff hopefuls. So maybe these guys can get a race win. They're not as consistent. They're this third tier behind the second tier. And they're all around the playoff cut line. One of them actually has a race win in Josh Berry. But since that race win, I think Berry has 1 or 2 top 10s. He's really been struggling. He's still locked into the playoffs, and he's still top 20 in points, so he's okay. But I think talent-wise, as it sits right now, speed-wise, he's with this group of drivers. That group of drivers, number 15 in my power rankings, Carson Hocevar. Number 16 in the rankings, Kyle Busch. Number 17, Ryan Preece. Number 18, Josh Berry. Number 19, Ricky Stenhouse. And number 20, AJ Allmendinger. All of these guys have had speed at some tracks, not so much speed at others. Like I said, Berry has a win. Preece has been near the front and also had, he's been hot and cold. Busch has been struggling, but had an okay week last week, gained some points to that cut line. Maybe Kyle Busch can still point his way in if he doesn't win. Hocevar arguably had the best weekend out of all these guys, finishing second. A great drive from him through the field to get there. And Hocevar is starting to show more and more consistent speed. Maybe he gets bumped up into that second tier. Right now, Hocevar is in on points, I believe, and Kyle Busch. Again, all these guys are actually super close. Josh Berry has a win and is in already. Ricky Stenhouse was above the cut line before the race started last week. He is now below the cut line because of the contact I already talked about between Hocevar and Stenhouse. And AJ Allmendinger, after a great Charlotte, has not quite held it up the last 2 races. He's still there on points. Or like not in the playoffs, but close to the playoffs and can still make a run. Him and his team just need to find some more consistent speed. So there you go. I have a tier 1A, a tier 1B, a second tier, and a third tier here in my driver power rankings. That's all I have for you guys this week. Please like, comment, subscribe. Give me your hot takes and your predictions in the comments below. I love to see what you guys say. I saw I had a comment on the last video saying Chase Briscoe was going to win, and looked good for like the first half of the stage, and then had a bad pit stop and never made it up, which has been a theme for him this year. So keep giving me those predictions. If I get enough of them, maybe I can incorporate it into an episode. Follow me on X. A lot going on in the sports world. Stanley Cup Finals, NBA Finals, Super Regionals, if you're a college baseball fan, are going on this weekend. Again, as I tell everybody, find a sport. Find a couch to watch some sports. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Take care of your friends. Stay safe out there. Have a good weekend. Peace.